The sprinkler mist clung to her car, droplets streaking down the windshield like nervous sweat. The beam of light didn't waver. It hunted. She rolled the window halfway, her pulse steady but her jaw tight. "Evening," she said, her voice measured. The man holding the flashlight leaned closer. His badge glimmered in the dim light, but his eyes were colder than metal. "This street doesn't see much traffic at night. You lost?" Her hand rested calmly on the steering wheel. "I live 2 blocks over. Took a detour." He smirked, faintly, the kind of smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Funny, haven't seen you around." She didn't answer right away. The pause stretched, thick, uncomfortable. A dog barked in the distance. She finally said, "Not everyone you don't notice is a stranger." The silence between them grew louder than words. His flashlight flicked across her face, lingering. Too long. A shadow crossed his features, half challenge, half unease. "License?" he asked sharply, breaking the quiet. She pulled it from her wallet with careful precision, every movement deliberate, as though his suspicion made the air fragile. Their fingers nearly touched as she handed it over. For the first time, his gaze faltered. His eyes darted to the address, then back to her steady expression. "You... FBI?" His voice caught, a stumble he didn't expect. Her lips pressed into the faintest smile. Not triumph, just confirmation. "I don't need to flash a badge for my presence to be valid here." The weight shifted, his flashlight lowered a fraction, his stance stiffening. Around them, the neighborhood remained indifferent. Yet something irreversible had just cracked, and she didn't have to raise her voice to make it happen. The flashlight didn't move. Instead, it cut harder across her face, as if the beam itself were a weapon. His boots crunched against the gravel, steady, rehearsed. She kept her hands on the wheel, calm but tight like someone who'd been here before. "Evening," he said, voice flat, chest forward. "This your car?" She didn't answer right away. The pause made him shift. His jaw clenched. "Yes," she said finally, steady. "Don't look like you live here," he muttered, scanning the street as if it belonged to him. Her voice carried no tremor. Didn't know breathing required proof of address. That landed sharper than she intended. His grip on the flashlight tightened and he leaned closer, badge glinting in the mist. "Watch your tone," he warned. A silence sat heavy. Sprinklers clicked in the distance, almost mocking the moment. She turned her head, slow, deliberate. "Why? Does it threaten your uniform?" The words cracked the armor he wore. His breath hitched, but his shoulders rose higher, as if bluffing against his own unease. "You people always got something smart to say," he snapped. The phrase hung between them. She inhaled deeply, not to fight, but to remind herself not to fold. "Funny," she said softly, "because you don't sound smart at all." The line slid under his skin. His face twitched, a vein pulsing near his temple. Authority wasn't strength anymore. It was a shield beginning to rattle. For a moment, neither spoke. The power shifted without movement, her silence louder than his posture. Then he cleared his throat, taking a half step back, though he pretended it was just to adjust his stance. And in that retreat, the night suddenly felt less his. Her hand moved, slowly to the window button, the hum of glass sliding down, filling the silence that pressed between them. No rush, no tremble, just calm. The guard leaned closer, impatience rough in his tone. "License, now." Her eyes met his, steady. "Is there a reason you've stopped me?" He smirked, puffing out his chest again. "I don't need a reason. I'm the authority here." She didn't flinch. Instead, she folded her hands on the steering wheel, letting silence stretch. The stillness made him shift his weight, as if the ground itself grew uneasy beneath his boots. "You think you're better than the rules?" His voice cracked slightly, the edge too sharp, betraying nerves he thought were hidden. Her reply was quiet, almost too soft. No, I think I deserve the same rules as anyone else. The words landed heavier than any shout could. His jaw tightened, but his eyes betrayed the flicker of doubt. Power had been easy when it was unchallenged. Now, her calm made it brittle. "Don't get smart with me," he snapped, but his volume felt like a cover, louder than his confidence. "I'm not," she said, lowering her voice even further. "I'm just asking why." For a moment, nothing moved. The road behind them was empty, but it felt crowded with tension, like witnesses unseen. Her silence stretched again, not fearful but steady, pulling the fight out of his posture. He coughed, cleared his throat, trying to reclaim ground. "Cooperate, or this gets worse." Her gaze didn't waver. "Maybe it's already worse." The line slipped into the air like a quiet knife, and for the first time, he looked away. The storm was his. The calm belonged to her. The guard's grip tightened on the gun, but for the first time, his eyes wavered. She didn't flinch. Her voice carried no anger, no fear, just that single line cutting through the air. "Do you always greet residents with a gun?" The silence that followed was heavier than the weapon he held. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked around as if the street itself might answer for him. I thought you were trespassing," he muttered, his tone unconvincing, almost defensive. Her gaze stayed steady, unblinking. "In my own neighborhood?" she asked softly, her calm pressing harder than any shout could. A few curtains shifted in nearby windows. People were watching now, not speaking, not interfering, just seeing, and that, too, made him uneasy. "You can't just look, I was doing my job," he said, but the words tumbled out hollow. "Your job?" she repeated, slower this time, each syllable deliberate. "Or your habit?" His throat tightened. He shifted his stance, gun lowering slightly, but his authority already slipping. She didn't press further. She didn't need to. The damage had been done with one sentence. Narration carried the weight he tried to ignore. In that moment, the line between suspicion and humiliation became visible, and it was he who stood exposed. "I asked you a question," she added after. A pause, her tone even. "Answer it." The guard swallowed, lips trembling before he finally looked away. "No," he said, quieter than before, shame creeping in where arrogance once stood. The power in the air had shifted completely. Not through force, not through noise, but through composure that left no place for him to hide. The silence that followed her words pressed into the night, heavy enough to make him swallow hard. His jaw clenched, but his hand betrayed him, twitching, toward the weapon at his side. He didn't draw. He only hovered, fingers grazing the cold steel, a gesture more dangerous than action itself. "You think that makes you safe?" Her voice came low, steady, cutting through his breathing. "I'm keeping order," he muttered, though the words cracked halfway. His eyes refused to meet hers, darting toward the shadows as if looking for witnesses to justify his stance. "You're shaking," she observed softly. The truth burned his ears. His grip tightened, but he didn't pull. Every inch of him screamed for control, yet control slipped like sand through his fingers. The more he tried to hold his ground, the more it showed he was losing it. "You don't belong here," he snapped, louder now, forcing authority into his tone. But even he heard the weakness underneath. She tilted her head, calm, unblinking. "And you do?" His breath hitched. The line pierced deeper than he expected, stripping the uniform of its false armor. He shifted his stance, as if taller posture could erase the doubt crawling over his face. From the open windows above, curtains stirred. A neighbor's light flicked on. Silent eyes began to gather, not yet stepping in, but watching enough to make his skin prickle. He lowered his hand almost in shame, though he tried to mask it as restraint. Still, the moment lingered, the fact that he had nearly pulled a weapon on a woman standing still, doing nothing but existing. Her silence after that said more than words ever could. And for the first time, he looked away. The gun's shadow stretched across her face, sharp against the dim light. She didn't flinch. Her voice was steady, lower than before, each word measured like she had rehearsed for this moment her entire life. "You're scared," she said softly. His jaw twitched. Eyes darting, hand refusing to move away from the holster. "Stay back. Don't try anything." She tilted her head almost like she was studying him. "Look at me. Really look. Do I look like a threat to you?" The silence pressed harder than his words. For a second, his breathing betrayed him, short, uneven, shaky. "You think this gun makes you bigger than me?" she whispered. He blinked, the weapon's outline still trembling against her skin. Somewhere deep in his eyes, the bravado cracked, replaced by a raw, nervous edge he couldn't swallow down. "Don't push me," he muttered. "You don't know what I can do." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, not mocking, not afraid, just steady. "You don't know what I've already done." The line landed heavy, hanging in the charged air. His grip faltered for a breath. Behind them, a door creaked open. Someone stepped out, but froze at the sight. Two figures locked, in a war without moving an inch. The woman didn't glance away, not even once. "This is the moment you'll remember," she murmured. "Not the uniform you wear, not the rules you hide behind. This shadow, my face, your choice." His Adam's apple bobbed. The gun's shadow quivered. And for the first time, he looked like he wanted to step back, like the weight of his own hand was too much to bear. The night held still, as though waiting for his collapse. But behind that stillness lay history, stories buried and ignored, voices smothered long before this night. "You think this is the first time?" Her words broke gently, not sharp, just steady. He blinked, sweat slipping down his temple. "First? What are you talking about?" Her eyes stayed fixed, not on the gun, but on him. Every complaint, every warning, people begged someone to listen. They were told it was nothing. That's how men like you feel untouchable. A silence hung. He shifted, forcing out a laugh too thin to hold. "Lady, you don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly," she cut in. "Because those files, they're not gone, just hidden. And tonight, you became another line in them." His throat worked, words trapped. For the first time, it wasn't his finger on the trigger that carried weight. It was hers. Her calm refusal to flinch. "You act like you're in control," she whispered softer now. "But you're standing in the middle of a silence that's about to break." He lowered his eyes. The pressure of unspoken history pressing in, the gun's shadow wavered. His breath hitched, uneven, as if he finally saw himself through her steady gaze. Somewhere in that pause, he knew the truth. Every ignored voice had led to this exact second, and he was no longer the one writing the story. Her stillness remained, her weapon, his silence, his undoing. The moment ended not with a shout, but with a shift, his hand lowering, hers never moving. He leaned against the counter, voice low. "You hear about Marcus?" They stopped him outside his own building. Said he was wandering. A woman folding her groceries stiffened. "They asked for his ID again, didn't they?" "Yeah." Like he carries proof just to breathe. His tone cracked but quickly settled. He told them he lived there. Still, they made him wait an hour in the heat. The woman's eyes lingered on the floor. "I heard about Luis, too. Riding home. Just a bike and a backpack. They said he cut through private property." "He's 13. The man's jaw tightened. 13, and they had him standing with hands up like a criminal. A silence grew between them, heavy but familiar. The kind of silence that holds Stories too old to shock but too sharp to forget. The woman finally whispered, "And the Johnsons? They paid for that pool. Still, the guard turned them away, said they weren't on the list." The man let out a hollow laugh. "The list. Always a list that erases our names." Narration slipped between them like shadow. They carried these stories not as tales, but as bruises disguised as rumor. Too dangerous to scream, too real to deny. "Funny," the woman murmured, "how none of this ever makes it to paper." "Because paper keeps things clean," he replied. "Our lives don't stay clean enough to be written." She looked at him, eyes burning but quiet. "Then we keep whispering, because whispers still travel." The man nodded, almost to himself. "And maybe one day they'll hear the echo." The room stilled again, but this time the silence was not surrender. It was a vow, fragile yet unbroken. The room stayed heavy after the last story, as though the air itself refused to move. Then an older man, his hands rough from years of labor, leaned forward. His voice was calm, but each word cut sharp. "They never see us as belonging," he said. No one responded. The words didn't need dressing. They just sat there, heavy as stone, pressing into everyone who heard them. A younger woman, eyes lowered, finally whispered, "Even when we pay, even when we smile, it's like the ground itself pushes us out." The man nodded slowly. "Documents don't change how they look at us. Deeds, leases, receipts, none of it matters when their eyes already decided we don't fit." A silence followed, the kind that reveals more than speech. Some shifted in their chairs. Others stared at the floor, unwilling to meet the truth, staring back. A boy no older than 16 muttered, "But I was born here. I thought that meant something." The older man looked at him, not unkindly. "It should have. But they don't see papers. They see skin." The boy swallowed hard, shoulders tight. A woman near the back finally exhaled, voice trembling but steady. "That's why we tell these stories. Because silence makes their lies stronger." Her words found no applause, only a quiet shift in the room. People sat straighter, not in pride, but in recognition of weight carried too long. "Sasier." Man leaned back, folding his arms. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "They've spent generations making us feel temporary," he said softly. "But the truth is, this place has more of us in its soil than it ever had of them." No one argued. No one could, ChatGPT said. The words from the former resident still hung in the air like smoke no one wanted to breathe. Nobody moved. Nobody denied it. And then, almost too casually, a voice broke the silence, low, almost tired. Every report died on someone's desk. The room shifted. Heads turned toward the officer who spoke, his hand trembling slightly as he set down his coffee. He didn't look up, didn't try to defend himself. He just stared at the table, as if the wood itself carried his guilt. "You mean all of them?" a woman asked, her voice breaking. He nodded slowly. Every complaint, every cry for help, they got filed, stamped, then forgotten. Not lost, not misplaced, just left to rot. The words landed heavy, each one stripping away the lie of oversight. "You watched it happen?" another voice asked. Sharper now. "I signed some of them," he admitted, eyes glistening. "I told myself it wasn't my call, that someone higher would act, but no one ever did." We all knew. The silence stretched long enough to make his breathing sound louder than it should. He pressed his palms flat against the table, as if bracing himself. "So it wasn't about one guard," the woman whispered. "It was the whole chain." He swallowed hard, his throat working against the truth. "The chain was built that way, and I never broke it." No one shouted. No one cursed. The room carried something heavier than rage. The realization that silence had been chosen, again and again, by men who now sat in front of them pretending to serve justice. And in that moment, the officer's hunched shoulders said more than any apology ever could. The officer's words still echoed in her mind. Every report died on someone's desk. She didn't sleep that night. By morning, her phone vibrated non-stop. Someone had sent her a link, a shaky clip, barely 2 minutes long. A trembling hand filming as a gun was pressed toward a man who never raised his voice. At the diner table, she slid the phone across. The officer's face paled. That's from that night. She didn't blink. And now it's everywhere. He pressed his palms together, whispering like a man praying. It wasn't supposed to get out. Her voice stayed flat, steady. Truth doesn't ask for permission. He flinched, staring at the screen replaying the moment. The man's calm dignity against the barrel, the silence in the room broken only by the shaky breath of whoever recorded it. "You don't understand," the officer muttered. "We bury things like this for a reason. Keeps order, keeps trust." She leaned forward, words clipped and sharp. Order for who? Trust for who? He had no answer. His mouth opened, then closed. The weight of the video hung between them. Narration filled the silence. What once fit neatly in reports and drawers now spread like wildfire, carried by hands that refused to stay still. The internet was merciless, not because it lied, but because it remembered. He pushed the phone back, eyes glassy. "It'll destroy people." Her tone didn't waver. "Or maybe it'll save them." The clip replayed again and again. Outside, voices were already rising, louder than the hum of traffic, louder than the silence in that diner. The officer dropped his gaze. For the first time, it wasn't her words that broke him. It was the truth refusing to stay buried. The clip kept, looping not just online but inside people's homes. News anchors broke it down frame by frame, their voices tight, measured. "What we see here is not just a gun. It's history repeating itself," one said. In living rooms, families leaned forward, some nodding, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The silence that used to protect men like him was cracking. At the corner store, a man whispered to his friend, "You remember—" They did the same to Marcus back then. Nobody listened. His friend only nodded, eyes on the ground. In a diner, two women spoke low but firm. "It's all there now. No one can call her a liar anymore." The younger one's voice trembled. "It feels like something's shifting." The sheriff sat in his office, blinds drawn. His phone buzzed with messages he didn't open. Every word online was a reminder that the story wasn't his to bury anymore. One by one, old victims found their voices. A tired man spoke on a local radio call-in. "He held me against my truck like that, too. I never told no one." The host paused, letting the weight of it hang. The power he once carried, absolute, unshakable, was slipping. Not in a courtroom, not yet, but in the quiet corners of belief, in coffee shops where strangers traded knowing looks, in church basements where mothers wept softly, finally heard. It wasn't justice written on paper, not yet, but it was justice, growing in whispers, in anger, in recognition, and it was spreading, faster than anyone could pull it back. The shift had started, and no one, no badge, no silence, no threat, could stop it. The first question landed soft, almost casual. "Did you, on that day, stop her at the gate?" His throat tightened. "I followed protocol." A silence followed that seemed to drag. The lawyer leaned forward. "Protocol? Or prejudice?" The guard blinked fast, sweat crawling down his temple. I did my job. From the gallery, someone muttered, "That's what they always say." The judge's gavel struck once, but the damage lingered. The lawyer's voice lowered. "So you saw her, judged her, and decided she didn't belong. Isn't that true?" The guard opened his mouth, but nothing came. His lips trembled, the weight of the room pressing against his chest. A woman from the second row leaned into her friend. "He won't last. Look at him." The narration slipped in only through silence, years of denial collapsing under one question, one pause, one unblinking stare. He finally muttered, I didn't mean—" His voice cracked. "Didn't mean or didn't think?" the lawyer asked sharply. The room held its breath. His hands gripped the chair, knuckles pale. For the first time, he looked less like a guard and more like a man cornered by his own choices. No one clapped, no one gasped. The shift happened in silence, in the way people looked at him, no longer with fear, but with pity. The judge's pen tapped the desk once, twice. The room did not breathe. The words had barely left her lips before the weight of the room shifted. For the first time, the guard blinked too often, his jaw tightening, his hands restless against the table. He tried to reclaim ground. I was trained to respond," he muttered, voice faltering. "You don't understand what it's like in the moment." Her eyes didn't leave him. "No, I understand exactly. You saw me. You didn't see danger. You saw my skin and decided it was enough." The audience drew breath, a ripple of unease, moving through the rows. He pressed forward, desperate. "That's not fair. I never meant for it to be about race." "Then why?" she asked softly. "Did your hand not shake when you aimed at me? Why was your voice steady, your finger ready? You weren't afraid of what I did. You were afraid of who I am." The silence cracked sharper than any gavel. His lips parted, but nothing came. The cameras clicked, freezing his collapse frame by frame. "Protocol," he whispered again, as if the word could shield him. Her reply was measured, steady. "Protocol is paper. Fear is choice. And you chose me." The jury's gaze shifted. The balance in the room tilted. Every eye no longer weighed her words, but his excuses. He swallowed hard, shrinking under the quiet truth. For a moment, no one spoke. The walls seemed to close in, the ceiling lights harsher, exposing everything he had tried to bury. His authority had slipped through his fingers, leaving only sweat and silence. And in that silence, she did not need to add another word. The silence that followed her last words still hung heavy, but she did not rush to fill it. Slowly she stood, her presence alone demanding attention. Eyes turned toward her. Even the officer who had moments ago insisted on protocol seemed unsure of his footing now. Her voice carried no tremor, only a cold steadiness. "You think I don't know fear?" She let the question linger, daring him to answer. He didn't. "Every week, I stand in front of men like you, men with badges, men with weapons, and I teach them what restraint means. I don't speak as a victim. I speak as someone who trains the people you call brothers." He blinked, confused. What are you saying?" "I'm an FBI tactical commander," she said simply, the weight of it slicing through the room. Murmurs rippled across the bystanders. His lips parted, but no words came. "You aimed at me thinking you saw weakness. What you never saw was discipline. What you never imagined," she paused, eyes locking onto him, "is that I'm the one teaching officers how not to become you." A flush crept across his face, authority dissolving like sand between his fingers. He shifted, tugging, at his collar, suddenly smaller under the fluorescent lights. One bystander whispered, "She trains them," and the air shifted, respect tilting in her direction. His badge, once an emblem of power, now seemed like an empty piece of metal pinned to a shrinking chest. He tried to steady himself, but his silence betrayed the collapse already unfolding inside. She didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice. She only stepped back, calm intact, while his world tilted beneath him. The room no longer leaned toward him, it leaned toward her. He sat by the phone, waiting for it to ring. Hours stretched into days, and the silence was louder than any reprimand. Once a call from him could summon action, shift outcomes, even bend the rules. Now, no one picked up. He dialed again, slower this time. "Chief, it's me. Just checking in." The line went dead before he finished. A whisper of shame pressed against his chest, heavier than any weight he had carried on patrol. He reached for his badge, laying it flat on the table. Once, it drew respect. Doors opened, voices lowered. Now it was nothing more than metal, cold and forgotten. At the precinct, doors that used to swing open stalled before him. "Sorry, man, we're full," a younger officer muttered without eye contact. He tried to laugh it off, but the rejection burned. Even those who once clung to his shadow now avoided his gaze, afraid silence might link them to his downfall. Walking. Down the street he caught fragments of murmurs, "That's him." Lost it all. His name, once a warning, had become a cautionary tale. Neighbors who used to nod now crossed the road, their eyes sliding past as if he no longer existed. At night, the weight of quiet filled the room. He spoke to himself just to break it. "I was somebody. I mattered." The words cracked, barely holding shape. The badge lay inches away, but it gave no answer, not even a glint in the fading light. For the first time, he realized authority wasn't power. It was borrowed respect. And now, stripped of the uniform, stripped of fear he once commanded, he was only a man facing silence that stretched forever. Her heels clicked softly against the pavement, the same street where his voice once cut her down. Now, silence carried her forward. No banners, no crowd, no music, just her steady walk, every step heavier than his old commands. A man standing outside the diner whispered, "That's her." The other nodded, lowering his eyes. No one dared to mock. The air itself seemed to bend around her calm. From across the street, a voice cracked. "You think walking like that changes anything?" It was him, leaning against a rusted car, his shirt untucked, his face thinner, tired. His tone carried no fire, just the brittle echo of what used to be control. She stopped just for a second. Her eyes lifted, meeting his without rush, without anger. "It already has," she said, her voice low, even. His jaw tightened. "You think people respect you? They only pity you." "No," she answered, shaking her head slightly. Pity looks down. Respect looks away. And right now, you can't look at me without flinching. The silence that followed was louder than his words. He shifted, pushing his hands in his pockets like a boy caught lying. "You'll forget this moment," he muttered, though even he sounded unsure. Her steps resumed, unhurried, unshaken. She didn't look back. Each stride said more than speeches ever could. That his reign ended not with a fight, but with her refusal to bow. And as she turned the corner, the whispers behind her grew, not of scandal, not of fear, but of quiet awe. For power no longer walked with a badge, nor with raised voices. It walked in silence with her. The microphones crackled as the last hand went up. A reporter leaned forward, cautious but eager. "After everything you've faced, what do you think made you endure?" His voice carried curiosity, but also something heavier, as though he already knew her answer would not be ordinary. She didn't rush. Silence filled the room, like a tide pulling everyone closer. Finally, she spoke, her tone steady, low. Restraint is power. Dignity outlasts fear. The words hung in the air. Even those who doubted her found themselves staring, unable to argue. Another reporter shifted uncomfortably, murmuring, "But don't you wish you'd fought louder? Maybe screamed, demanded?" She met his eyes. Screaming would have fed their story. Silence became mine. Her reply cut sharper than anger ever could. In the back, the man who once mocked her bowed his head, hiding his face. The weight of her calm exposed him more than any outburst ever could. Narration softened the scene. Her composure was not weakness. It was armor, forged through years of being told she was less, standing now as proof she was always more. The first reporter whispered almost to himself, "Restraint, power," as though repeating it would anchor the truth. No applause followed. No rush of voices, just stillness. A silence so heavy it became its own verdict. She adjusted her coat, rose from the table, and left without another word. Narration closed the moment. True victories rarely roar. They settle deep, echoing long after the noise has gone. In her quiet, change had already begun. And so she walked away, leaving the room not in chaos, but in silence, thick with the weight of reform.